Stop pretending you're one of us, Mark. My father's voice cut through Grandma's living room like a blade. I stood there, frozen, watching everyone's eyes turn toward me. My stepmother Vanessa smirked from the leather armchair. My stepbrothers Tyler and Brett snickered behind their hands. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, had just stepped out to retrieve another document, leaving me alone with people who had never wanted me here. I'm serious, my father continued, his face twisted with disgust. You're embarrassing yourself. This reading is for actual family members. My throat tightened. I had driven 3 hours from my tiny apartment in Columbus to be here for Grandma's will reading. She had died 2 weeks ago, and I was still numb from the loss. She was the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered. Dad, Don't call me that in front of everyone, he hissed. Vanessa laughed quietly. The sound made my stomach turn. Then the door opened. Mr. Patterson returned, holding a sealed envelope with Grandma's handwriting across the front. He cleared his throat, looking directly at me. Actually, Thomas, he said to my father, your mother left very specific instructions about Mark. Mr. Patterson adjusted his glasses and broke the seal on the envelope. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Vanessa stopped smirking. The lawyer began reading Grandma's letter aloud. Her words felt like she was still in a room with us. To my family, he read, I want you to know that I made these decisions with a clear mind and full heart. Only one person visited me every single week for the past 5 years. Only one person called to check on me. Only one person remembered my birthday without prompting. That person was Mark. My eyes burned with tears. I remembered those Saturday mornings at her small house, bringing her groceries, fixing her leaky faucet, just sitting with her while she told stories about Grandpa. Mark was my true constant. The letter continued. While the rest of you were too busy, he made time. While you forgot, he remembered. While you took, he gave. My father's jaw clenched. Tyler stared at the floor. Mr. Patterson looked up from the letter. There's more. Your grandmother established a private trust in Mark's name. The room went completely silent. Vanessa shot to her feet. That's impossible. She was confused at the end. Everyone knows that. Mr. Patterson remained calm. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Actually, Mrs. Morrison, your mother-in-law underwent comprehensive medical and psychological evaluations 6 months before her death. She was examined by 3 independent doctors. All confirmed she was of sound mind and fully competent. He slid the documents across the coffee table. My father grabbed them, his hands shaking as he read. His face went pale. This can't be right, Vanessa whispered, but her voice had lost its edge. Brett leaned forward. What kind of trust? Mr. Patterson folded his hands. A substantial one. But it's not just about money. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The trust also includes something else. Something that will affect all of you directly. My heart pounded. I had no idea what Grandma had done. Tyler and Brett exchanged nervous glances. My father set the medical documents down slowly, his confidence crumbling. What else? Vanessa demanded. Mr. Patterson looked at me. Mark, your grandmother gave you voting rights in Morrison Construction. My name is Mark Morrison. I'm 28 years old, originally from a small town outside Cleveland, Ohio. Before I continue, I want to ask you to subscribe to this channel for more fascinating stories like this one. You won't regret it. Now, back to that moment when my entire world shifted. Morrison Construction was the company my grandfather built from nothing. It was worth millions. My father had been running it since Grandpa died 10 years ago, treating it like his personal kingdom. And now Grandma had given me voting rights. How much? My father asked quietly. 40%, Mr. Patterson replied. The number hung in the air like smoke. 40% meant I was a major stakeholder. It meant they couldn't make big decisions without me. It meant I had real power. My father looked like he might be sick. Vanessa's face had gone from smug to horrified in seconds. We need to contest this, she said, turning to my father. There has to be a way to... There isn't, Mr. Patterson interrupted firmly. Everything was done legally and properly. I supervised it myself. Then Vanessa said something that made my blood run cold. She leaned close to my father and whispered, but I heard it clearly. "Thomas, we already spent some of that money." I sat there processing everything while memories flooded back. Years of being pushed aside, forgotten birthdays, Christmases where my stepbrothers got new cars while I got nothing, family dinners where I wasn't invited, business meetings I was never told about. Even though Grandpa's company was supposedly my legacy too, they had bet everything on me being weak, on me staying quiet and accepting whatever scraps they threw my way. They assumed I would never stand up for myself because I never had before. I remember the day my father married Vanessa when I was 12. She looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. Within months, I was eating dinner alone while they laughed together in the dining room. My room got moved to the basement to make space for Tyler's gaming setup. I remembered asking my father if I could work at the company after college. He told me I wasn't management material. Meanwhile, Brett got an executive position straight out of high school. In this moment, sitting in Grandma's living room, I finally understood. She had seen everything. She had known exactly what they were doing to me. Mr. Patterson closed the folder. "There's more we need to discuss." The lawyer pulled out another set of documents. "Your grandmother also placed your father's house in a life estate trust." "What does that mean?" Tyler asked. "It means," Mr. Patterson explained, "that Thomas and Vanessa can live in a house for as long as they want, but they don't own it. Mark does." Vanessa made a sound like she'd been punched. My father just stared at the floor, his face completely blank. That house was worth at least $800,000. It was their pride and joy, the place where they hosted parties and impressed clients. And now it was mine. "She can't do this," Vanessa said, her voice rising. "We've lived here for 15 years. We renovated. We put money into it. With respect, Mrs. Morrison, it was never legally yours. It was always in your mother-in-law's name. She simply allowed you to live there." I felt dizzy. This was too much, too fast. My father finally looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. Then he stood up and walked over. His expression had changed completely. The contempt was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "Mark," he said softly, "can we talk? Just you and me? Outside." We stepped onto Grandma's front porch. The afternoon sun was warm on my face. My father closed the door behind us, then turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before. It almost looked like kindness. "Son, I know things have been difficult between us." I said nothing, just waited. "I think there have been some misunderstandings over the years. Your stepmother and I, we never meant to make you feel excluded. We were just trying to blend our families, and maybe we didn't handle it perfectly." He was lying. I could see in the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "What I'm trying to say is, we're still family. Your grandmother clearly wanted us to work together, so maybe we should talk about how to handle all this quietly. You know, without lawyers and complications. We could sit down, just us, and figure out an arrangement that works for everyone." "An arrangement?" I repeated. "Yes, I'm sure we can find a solution that makes sense. You don't want to get tangled up in business decisions and property management. That's stressful. Why don't you let me handle the company side, and we'll make sure you're taken care of financially. Would that work?" He was trying to buy me off, to manipulate me into giving up everything Grandma had fought to protect. I opened my mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed. Then again, and again, text messages flooding in. That night, I sat in my apartment scrolling through messages from relatives I barely knew. Cousins, second cousins, people I hadn't heard from in years. All of them had the same basic message. They heard I had manipulated Grandma, that I had isolated her from the family, that I had pressured her into changing her will. Someone was spreading lies about me, and they were doing it fast. By morning, 3 different relatives had called asking if it was true that I'd kept them away from Grandma's bedside. An aunt I hadn't spoken to since childhood left a voicemail saying she was disappointed in me. I felt sick. Everything Grandma had given me was being poisoned by rumors. My phone kept buzzing with accusations and questions. People who had never cared about me suddenly had strong opinions about my character. Then I got a message from my cousin Derek. We'd been close as kids before the family split into factions. His message was short. Call me. Private. I called immediately. Mark, I need to tell you something, he said. I was at dinner with Aunt Helen tonight. Vanessa was there. I heard her on the phone in the bathroom. She's the one spreading the rumors. She's calling everyone, telling them you tricked Grandma. She's trying to turn the whole family against you before you can use any of that inheritance. My hands shook. You're sure? Completely sure. I'm texting you proof right now. 2 days later, I drove back to Grandma's house. Mr. Patterson had called and asked me to come alone. He had something to give me. The house felt empty without her. I found the lawyer in her study, standing beside a large wooden box I'd never seen before. Your grandmother left this for you, he said, with instructions that you were to receive it only after the will reading. She said you'd know what to do with it. I opened the box carefully. Inside were journals, receipts, bank statements, and printed emails. Grandma had documented everything. Years of financial records showing how Vanessa had slowly drained money from family accounts. Emails where she pressured Grandma to co-sign loans. Text messages where she asked for cash, always with some emergency excuse. There were receipts showing Vanessa had bought a luxury car and told Grandma it was for business purposes. Credit card statements with charges at expensive restaurants and vacation resorts, all paid from accounts Grandma thought were being used for the company. My hands trembled as I read page after page of evidence. Grandma had known everything. She had been gathering proof for years. Then I found a folder labeled Thomas. Inside was an email my father had written to Grandma 3 years ago. In it, he admitted he knew Vanessa was taking money, but he wrote that confronting her would disrupt the household and cause unnecessary drama. He asked Grandma to just let it go. My father had known, and he had done nothing. I confronted him at his office the next morning. He looked surprised to see me, then nervous when I closed the door. We need to talk about this, I said, sliding the email across his desk. He read it slowly. His face went gray. Where did you get this? Grandma saved everything. She knew what Vanessa was doing, and she knew you were letting it happen. My father set the paper down. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, I stayed quiet to keep the peace. Keep the peace? My voice rose. She stole from Grandma, from the family, and you just watched. You don't understand how complicated it is, being married to someone like Vanessa. She has a temper. She makes threats. It was easier to just let her have her way on small things. Small things? This is fraud. He looked up at me, and I saw something break in his expression. I know what I did was wrong. I was weak, Mark. I chose the easy path instead of the right one. And I let you suffer for it too. All those years I pushed you aside, it wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because loving you meant standing up to her, and I didn't have the courage. For the first time in my life, my father was being honest with me, but it didn't fix anything. It just made the betrayal hurt more. My phone rang. It was Mr. Patterson. Mark, we need to meet. Urgently. The lawyer's office was downtown, in a building with tall windows and marble floors. I sat across from Mr. Patterson while he pulled up files on his computer. An internal audit was conducted on Morrison Construction, he explained. It's standard procedure when ownership changes hands. What they found is serious. He turned the screen toward me. The numbers made my head spin. Hundreds of thousands of dollars missing from company accounts. Money that should have gone to workers, to materials, to legitimate business expenses. Instead, it had been funneled into personal accounts. Who? I asked, though I already knew. Tyler and Brett Morrison. Your stepbrothers. They've been using company funds for personal expenses, cars, trips, even gambling debts. And because you now hold voting rights as a major stakeholder, you're legally required to act on this information. My stomach dropped. What happens if I don't? Then you become complicit. You could be held personally responsible for their actions. The company could face lawsuits. You could face criminal charges. I stared at the numbers on the screen. Tyler and Brett had stolen from the company my grandfather built. They had done it knowing my name was attached to the business. They hadn't cared that their actions could destroy everything. What do I need to do? I asked. Approve a formal investigation. It has to go through proper channels. The board will need to be notified. If the evidence holds up, they'll face consequences. I thought about my father, about the family already fracturing, about how this would tear everything apart. But I thought about Grandma too, about integrity, about doing what was right even when it was hard. Do it, I said. The investigation was approved that afternoon. By evening, Vanessa knew. She called my phone 17 times. I didn't answer. Then she showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door so hard I thought she might break it. You think you can destroy this family? She screamed through the door. You think you can turn on your own brothers? They're not my brothers, I said quietly, not opening the door. We gave you everything. A home, a family, a future, and this is how you repay us. I almost laughed. They had given me nothing but pain and rejection. They had made me feel worthless for years. And now they wanted gratitude. I'm doing what Grandma would have wanted. I said, your grandmother was a bitter old woman who poisoned you against us. She turned you into this. You were such a sweet kid before she got her claws into you. Something inside me snapped. I opened the door and looked Vanessa in the eye. Grandma was the only person who ever loved me. The only one who saw me as a person instead of a problem. You want to know why she left me everything? Because I was there. When she was sick, when she was lonely, when she needed help, I showed up. Where were you? Vanessa's face twisted with rage. You're going to regret this, Mark. I will destroy you. I will make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. By the time I'm done, you won't have a friend left in this family. She turned and stormed away. I closed the door and locked it. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Vanessa was already making good on her threat. The local newspaper ran a story the next morning. The headline read, Family torn apart by inheritance dispute. The article painted me as a manipulative grandson who had isolated an elderly woman and convinced her to disinherit her real family. They quoted anonymous sources saying I had kept relatives away from Grandma's bedside, that I had pressured her to change her will, that I was now using my inheritance to attack family members who had always treated me well. It was all lies, but it was published. People were reading it, sharing it. My phone exploded with messages. Some people defending me, but more attacking. Distant relatives I'd never met had opinions about my character. Friends from high school who hadn't spoken to me in years were suddenly experts on my relationship with Grandma. Then a reporter called. She said her name was Angela Torres from the Cleveland Observer. She wanted to interview me for a follow-up story. I'm not interested, I started to say. I think you should be, she interrupted. Because the story that's out there right now isn't true. I can tell. I've been a reporter for 15 years, and I know a smear campaign when I see one. But if you don't tell your side, their version becomes the only version. Is that what you want? I thought about Grandma, about her journals and documents, about the truth that deserved to be told. What do you need from me? I asked. I met Angela at a coffee shop near the university. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. I brought copies of everything. Grandma's journals, the financial records, the medical evaluations proving she was competent, the emails showing Vanessa's manipulation. Angela read through it all carefully, taking notes. She asked good questions. She didn't judge or assume. She just listened. This is bigger than I thought, she said finally. Your stepmother has been running a very calculated campaign. But the evidence you have here changes everything. Can I publish these documents? Will it help people see the truth? It'll do more than that. It'll show that your grandmother was protecting you from people who were actively stealing from the family. That's a completely different story. The article came out 3 days later. This time, the headline read, The grandson who saved his grandmother's legacy. Angela had done her homework. She'd interviewed Mr. Patterson, reviewed the medical records, and confirmed the financial irregularities at Morrison Construction. The story went viral. Within hours, it was being shared across social media. People who had attacked me were suddenly apologizing. Relatives who had believed Vanessa's lies were calling to say they were sorry. But the biggest impact came from something Angela discovered while researching. Something even I hadn't known about. The secret loans. Angela called me the day after her article published. "Mark, I need to ask you about something. Did you know your stepmother took out loans against company assets?" "What loans?" "I found records while verifying the financial documents you gave me. Vanessa took out 3 separate loans over the past 2 years. She used Morrison construction equipment and property as collateral. The loans total almost $400,000, and they're overdue." My heart stopped. "How overdue?" 6 months on 2 of them. 9 months on the 3rd. The bank has been sending notices. If the loans aren't paid soon, they can seize the collateral, which means they can take company assets. I felt sick. This was worse than the missing money from the accounts. This threatened the entire business. Does my father know? I don't think so. The paperwork was done in Vanessa's name only. She forged authorization documents. If this comes out, she could face criminal charges. And the company? Angela paused. The company could be in serious trouble. The bank is already considering their options. I wanted to warn you before I publish this part of the story. You're publishing it? Mark, this is major financial fraud. It's news. But more than that, people need to know what she did. Otherwise, she'll find a way to blame you for this too. I hung up and immediately called Mr. Patterson. By the time I finished explaining, he was already pulling up records. The bank sent letters to the company address. Vanessa must have intercepted them. She's been hiding this from everyone. What happens now? I asked. Now? He sighed heavily. Now everything falls apart unless we act fast. The bank scheduled a meeting for the following Monday. They want to discuss resolution options for the defaulted loans. My father was required to attend as the nominal head of Morrison Construction. I was required to attend as a major stakeholder. We sat in a conference room with 3 bank executives and their lawyer. My father looked like he hadn't slept in days. I learned later that Vanessa had finally confessed to the loans over the weekend. The betrayal had broken something in him. The head banker was a stern woman named Patricia Hayes. She laid out the situation bluntly. Morrison Construction is in default on 3 major loans. The total owed, including interest and penalties, is $473,000. We've been patient, but our patience has limits. Without immediate payment or a concrete repayment plan, we will begin seizure proceedings. "We'll pay," my father said desperately. "Just give us time to—" "With what money, Mr. Morrison? Our analysis shows your company's liquid assets are barely enough to cover payroll and current contracts. You don't have $500,000 sitting around." My father looked at me. Everyone looked at me. Because of the trust Grandma had established, I had access to funds they didn't. I had the power to save the company. Or let it fall. Mr. Patterson leaned close and whispered, "There's something you should know. Your grandmother prepared for this." We requested a brief recess. In a smaller conference room, Mr. Patterson showed me documents I'd never seen before. Backup plans Grandma had created. Emergency clauses built into the trust. Protective structures designed to save the company if things went wrong. "She knew," I said quietly. "She knew they would mess this up." She hoped they wouldn't. But she planned for the possibility. These clauses give you options. You can restructure the company's debt. You can negotiate with the bank using trust assets as backing. But there's a condition. What condition? He slid another document across the table. Activating these emergency measures requires a change in company leadership. Someone has to take operational control. Someone the bank trusts to fix the problems and protect their investment. I read the document. The words swam in front of my eyes. This will make me CEO. Temporary so initially. But yes, you have full authority to make decisions, restructure operations, and restore financial stability. Your father would retain ownership shares, but he wouldn't control daily operations. I thought about my father in that conference room, broken and desperate. I thought about the workers who depended on Morrison Construction for their livelihoods, about the clients who trusted us, about Grandpa's legacy. How long do I have to decide? They want an answer today. The bank is losing patience. I sat there for a long moment, feeling the weight of everything. Then I picked up the pen, and I signed. The decision kept me awake for 3 straight nights. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every memory. My father had been terrible to me, but he was still my father. Taking control of the company meant humiliating him publicly. It meant ending his authority over the business his father had built. But letting the company fail meant destroying everything Grandpa had worked for. It meant putting 50 employees out of work. It meant letting Vanessa's greed win. I thought about what Grandma would want. She had loved Grandpa's company. She had protected it fiercely, and she had trusted me with it. On the 3rd night, I finally accepted what I had to do. Mr. Patterson filed the necessary paperwork the next morning. The bank was notified. An emergency board meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. All shareholders and board members were required to attend. My father called me Wednesday night. "Mark, please, don't do this. We can fix things another way. I'll get the money somehow. I'll sell the house. Just don't take the company from me." "Dad, the house isn't yours to sell. It's mine, remember?" Silence. "I'm trying to save the company," I continued. "That's all I'm doing. If you'd managed it properly, this wouldn't be necessary. You're punishing me." "No, I'm cleaning up your mess. There's a difference." The call ended badly, but I'd said what needed to be said. Friday came too quickly. The board meeting was held in the conference room at Morrison Construction's main office. I'd been in that building 100 times growing up, but always as a visitor, never as someone with power. The board members filed in. Most were older men who had worked with Grandpa. They looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. I was 28 and had never held a real position in the company. Why should they trust me? Mr. Patterson presented the evidence methodically. The missing funds, the unauthorized loans, the forged documents, Tyler and Brett's misuse of company resources, Vanessa's systematic theft, my father's willful blindness to all of it. With each revelation, the board members' expressions grew darker. These were people who had built their careers on integrity. They didn't tolerate fraud. When the presentation finished, the board voted. Tyler and Brett were removed from all company positions immediately. My father was asked to resign as president. He signed the papers with shaking hands, not looking at anyone. Then they voted on my appointment as CEO. It was unanimous. Vanessa had been waiting in the hallway. When she saw my father emerge, defeated and silent, she lost control. She started screaming about injustice and betrayal, about how I had destroyed the family. Security had to escort her from the building. As she was led away, she turned back and shouted, "This isn't over, Mark. I will make you pay for this." But it was over. At least, that chapter was. What I didn't know was that she had one final move left. The lawsuit was filed 2 weeks later. Vanessa was suing me personally for undue influence over a vulnerable adult and manipulation of estate planning documents. She claimed I had isolated Grandma from her family and coerced her into changing her will. The lawsuit demanded that all assets be returned to their rightful owners and that I be removed as CEO of Morrison Construction. It also demanded significant financial damages for emotional distress. It was frivolous. Mr. Patterson said so immediately, but it was also dangerous. Even frivolous lawsuits can be expensive and time-consuming, and the publicity would damage my reputation just when I was trying to establish credibility as the new company leader. The court date was set for 3 months out. In the meantime, Vanessa gave interviews to any reporter who would listen. She painted herself as a grieving daughter-in-law who had loved and cared for Grandma, only to be betrayed by a manipulative grandson. Some people believed her. Not many, after Angela's thorough reporting, but enough to make things difficult. I received hate mail, angry phone calls. One night, someone spray-painted thief on my apartment door, but I also received support. Former employees of Morrison Construction wrote letters thanking me for saving their jobs. Grandma's friends from church spoke up about how I had visited her faithfully. Even some distant relatives came forward to defend me. Angela Torres called me the week before the trial. I found something. Something Vanessa doesn't know exists. Your grandmother made a video. The video was dated 6 months before Grandma died. She had gone to Mr. Patterson's office and recorded a formal statement on camera with witnesses present. It was her final testimony, created specifically in case anyone challenged her will. I watched it alone in Mr. Patterson's office the night before the trial. Seeing Grandma's face, hearing her voice, it broke something open inside me. My name is Helen Morrison, she began. I am making this statement of my own free will, in the presence of my attorney and 2 witnesses. I am of sound mind, as confirmed by medical evaluation. I want to explain my estate planning decisions, so there can be no doubt about my intentions. She went on to describe how I had been the only family member who visited regularly, how I had helped her with household tasks and medical appointments, how I had called just to talk, with no agenda or request for money. Then she talked about the others, about Tyler and Brett asking for loans they never repaid, about Vanessa's constant financial demands, about my father's passive acceptance of behavior he knew was wrong. I love my son, Grandma said, looking directly into the camera. But Thomas is weak. He chose comfort over courage, and that choice hurt his own child. Mark deserved better from his father. Since Thomas failed to protect him, I will. She explained the trust structure, the company voting rights, the life estate on the house. Every decision was clearly reasoned and deliberately planned. If anyone challenges this will, she concluded, it won't be because they love me. It will be because they want what I chose to give to someone more deserving. And that tells you everything you need to know. The video ended. I sat there crying in that quiet office, feeling Grandma's love reach across the barrier of death one final time. The judge will see this tomorrow, Mr. Patterson said gently. Vanessa's lawsuit won't survive it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Vanessa sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit. My father sat behind her, staring at his hands. Tyler and Brett weren't there at all. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Eleanor Whitfield. She had a reputation for being fair, but impatient with nonsense. Vanessa's lawyer presented their case first. He talked about my supposed isolation of Grandma, about the suspicious timing of the will changes, about my lack of qualifications to run a major company. He made me sound calculating and cruel. Then it was our turn. Mr. Patterson was brilliant. He methodically dismantled every claim. He presented the medical evaluations proving Grandma's competence. He showed phone records of my regular calls to her. He brought in testimony from her neighbors about my weekly visits. But the turning point was a video. When Grandma's face appeared on the courtroom screen, Vanessa went pale. As Grandma spoke, clearly and firmly explaining her decisions, Vanessa's lawyer started shuffling papers nervously. By the time the video ended, the case was effectively over. Judge Whitfield didn't even recess to deliberate. I'm dismissing this lawsuit, she announced. The evidence overwhelmingly supports that Mrs. Helen Morrison acted with full capacity and clear intent. Furthermore, I'm ordering the plaintiff to pay the defendant's legal fees. Bringing a frivolous lawsuit to harass a family member is not something this court will tolerate. It was over. Vanessa had lost everything. Her reputation, her credibility, and she would have to pay my legal costs, which weren't small. As we left the courtroom, my father approached me in the hallway. Can we talk? He asked quietly. We went to a small park near the courthouse. It was autumn, and the leaves were turning orange and gold. We sat on a bench overlooking a pond where ducks paddled lazily. For a long time, my father said nothing. Then, I'm jealous of you. I turned to look at him. His face was older than I remembered. Tired. I've always been jealous, he continued. Even when you were little. You were so much like my father. Smart, principled, brave. Everything I wasn't. And it scared me. I saw you growing up to be the man I never managed to become, and instead of being proud, I resented it. So you pushed me away. Yes, and I let Vanessa push you even further. It was easier than confronting my own failures. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but really I was just being a coward. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that everything wrong between us was my fault, not yours. You were a good son. I was a terrible father. I thought about all the years of hurt, all the moments I needed him and he hadn't been there. Part of me wanted to stay angry, to make him hurt the way he hurt me. But another part of me, the part that sounded like Grandma, knew that holding on to anger would only poison me. I don't forgive you yet, I said honestly, but maybe someday I will. For now, I just need you to do better. Be honest. Be present. Stop choosing comfort over what's right. I will, he said. I promise. I didn't know if he would keep that promise, but I knew I had spoken the truth I needed to speak. We sat there as the sun began to set, two damaged people trying to find a way forward. The months after the trial were transformative. As CEO of Morrison Construction, I restructured the entire operation. I brought in financial auditors to ensure transparency. I fired contractors who had been overcharging us. I renegotiated supplier contracts and found better deals. Within 6 months, the company was profitable again. Within a year, we had paid off the defaulted loans and established a healthy reserve fund. But I didn't just focus on money. I remembered what Grandpa had valued, treating workers fairly and giving back to the community. I increased wages for our crew members. I established a scholarship fund for children of employees who wanted to go to college. And I created something special in Grandma's name. Using part of the trust she left me, I funded a senior community center in our town, a place where elderly people could gather, take classes, get help with bills and paperwork. It was everything Grandma would have loved. The center opened on what would have been her 85th birthday. Almost 200 people came to the dedication ceremony. Friends, family, community members. Even my father attended, standing quietly in the back. Meanwhile, Vanessa's life had fallen apart. The foreclosure on their house went through when they couldn't make payments. She and my father separated. She moved to another state, her reputation destroyed. Tyler and Brett tried to rebuild their lives. Last I heard, Tyler was working at a warehouse and Brett was in community college. They weren't awful people, just spoiled ones who had finally faced consequences. As for me, I stood in Grandma's restored house, now serving a purpose that would have made her proud, and I felt at peace. 5 years have passed since that day in Grandma's living room, when my father told me to stop pretending I was family. 5 years since Mr. Patterson opened that envelope and changed my life forever. Morrison Construction is thriving. We've expanded to 3 cities and employ over 100 people. The company Grandpa built and Grandma protected is now stronger than ever. The senior center named after Grandma serves hundreds of elderly people each month. I visit regularly, just like I used to visit her. I help with their problems, listen to their stories, and try to give them the same gift she gave me, the feeling that someone cares. My father and I have rebuilt something resembling a relationship. It's not perfect. There's too much history for it to ever be easy. But we talk regularly. He attends company events. He's even volunteered at the senior center a few times. He's trying, in his own flawed way, to be better. Last month, I received a letter from a woman I'd never met. She said she was Grandma's friend from decades ago. She wrote that Grandma used to talk about me all the time, about how proud she was of the man I was becoming. The letter said Grandma always knew I would do great things if given the chance. I keep that letter in my office, next to a photo of Grandma and me from one of our Saturday mornings together. In the picture, we're both smiling, and she has her arm around my shoulders like she protected me from the world. Today, I stood in that community center and watched elderly people laughing together, helping each other, finding friendship and purpose. I thought about the boy my father said didn't belong, the grandson they tried to push aside and forget. And I realized something Grandma had known all along. They told me I wasn't part of the family. They told me to stop claiming a place I didn't deserve. But the truth was simpler than that. More powerful. I was always family. I was the only one who truly understood what family meant. And that's why I was the one who saved it.